Well, hello everyone. This is Jim Peacock with Peak Careers, and welcome to another Peak Careers interview. Today, we're going to be exploring implicit bias in career services and what are some things we can do about it. My guests today are Dr. Cheryl Love, who is a career counselor and liaison to the College of Education and Integrative Studies and the Bronco Dreamers Resource Center at Cal Poly Pomona. And Lakeisha Mathews is the director of the Career and Internship Center at the University of Baltimore and also the owner of Right Resumes and Career Coaching. So today we're going to explore this topic. It's something that's sort of been a big part of my life recently, and as it probably has for many of you. And really knowing that we all view the world from our own perspective, how we were raised, where we were raised, our family's culture, all of that means that we have some level of implicit bias. And so today we're going to explore what do you folks see as issues affecting quality career services on this? And what can we as career service providers do to improve our sensitivity to the subject? So Dr. Cheryl Love, I already did a short introduction. I'll just also mention that she has 32 years of experience as a counselor and teacher in all 4 higher education systems in California, as well as a public school and nonprofit sector. She is currently the co-chair of the National Career Development Association Committee on Diversity Initiatives and Cultural Inclusion. And Lakeisha Mathews, besides being at University of Baltimore, is also the owner of Right Resumes and Career Coaching, where she does career coaching and training for mid-level and mid-management professionals in a variety of industries. And she is always committed to the field of career development and has been a trustee at large for NCDA, a trustee for higher ed, and is currently the president-elect for the National Career Development Association. I should be able to say that. We are all affiliated with some way with NCDA, and I'm just want to make sure that people know this is not an NCDA sponsored event. This is a Peak Careers event, and we're going to explore this topic today. And thank you both very much for coming. So let's just dive in. So again, knowing that where we are born and raised affects who we are. And I'll just briefly say that I grew up outside of Detroit, Michigan. And so I'm bringing that with me, but I grew up in a white suburb, and I have one of my earliest memories, I was just a little kid, my mom taking me to the dentist in Ecorse, Michigan. And I was walking back to the car and this little African-American kid was going to beat me up. I was like, that's a memory from like 5 years old or 6 years old. And, I always put that aside. And then I realized that's never going away, right? I'm 64 years old and I could still remember that. That's affecting how I view the world today. And that's really why I wanted to really explore this with you folks. So Lakeisha, let's start with, what do you see as some of the issues affecting the quality career services and in relationship to this implicit bias that we all have?
Sure. Well, Jim, thanks for having me today. And thank you for highlighting this topic and sharing your story. I think your story is so important because we all have some sort of diversity story. We all have an identity. And my lens is very much from Baltimore City. I'm from an urban area, single parent family, worked my way through college. But my college attendance was at a predominantly white institution where I was sometimes the only minority person in a classroom. And all of my working career has been at predominantly white institutions as well, but working with different student populations. So all of my diversity variables have played a different role when I walk into a room. I'm a woman who's also a mother. I at one point was a young professional, but hitting some birthday milestones coming up, that's starting to shift because age plays a role. And I'm also African-American. I also face some actual racial incidents in my undergraduate experience that really, like you, were traumatic and sort of shaped my experience with other cultures. And I think when I think about my experiences and what I see with my students today and my colleagues, And specifically to career services, some of the things, the first thing that I see is that our offices aren't diverse. So I think of myself as a student and or a job seeker walking to be serviced into a workforce development center and no one looks like me. And it makes a difference, and it's not that whoever's there is not there to help you, but it just makes a difference to see someone who looks like you. There's a psychological piece that says when someone there looks like me, they understand where I'm coming from. And I think that to a certain degree, we can all empathize with people, but it's really different to understand and have walked in the same similar shoes. So one of the things I would say is just to challenge our offices to look at the diversity of our offices, look at who we're hiring. Most of our students aren't 100% anything. So our offices shouldn't be 100% anything. And that when I hire, you could go to my website today and look at my team. I'm very proud to say that we are a diverse team. I have Black, Caucasian, biracial, men, women. We just have persons from all different walks of life on our team. And that's something I hope for when I'm recruiting. The second thing I would say is because all of our teams aren't very diverse, direct outreach. Career services in many of our campuses, but also in the nonprofit sector, or for many of us who are in private business, career services is really utilized by people who seek it out. But what about all the other people who don't seek out career services? And it's normally an accessibility issue. They don't know, or there are other things that are just more important. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of need, if you look at me as a college student, I was struggling to pay my tuition, to have housing, to get food. So thinking about going to a career center is like, that's not even on my mind, right? So we need to outreach to specific populations. So on my campus, we have special outreach to veterans, persons with disabilities. We have special outreach to non-traditional students, special outreach, depending on the different populations on our campus. The third thing I would probably also say is multicultural competency training. The diversity conversation has been around for a long time. It's not new. It's just that I think that there are people who are now engaging in it that didn't before. And I think one of the most important things when it comes to this conversation of implicit and unconscious bias is the work that we do individually. It is knowing our biases. It is working through our biases. It is looking at our friends, our social networks, and saying, do I have a multicultural network? Do I surround myself with people who are different than me? And then I think as educators and as professionals is saying to myself, do I have assumptions about people who come into my office and sit down at my desk? Do I perceive them differently? Do I serve different people differently depending on who they are? And you said something really important, Jim, and that is that we all have unconscious bias. So it doesn't matter where you're from, you have it, but I think a key is being aware. And then the last thing I'll say is I think that how we educate the employment community for our constituents is also super important. I always tell my staff, employers come specifically to our university because we are the most diverse campus in the university system of Maryland. But when they come and they say, oh, we're hiring, we love diversity, I say, talk to me about the makeup of your company. Talk to me about your diversity initiatives, and I get blank stares. And I think that it's our job to make sure that the companies we send our students to, all of our students will be comfortable at those companies, whether it's LGBTQIA, whether it's racially diverse, gender diversity, what have you. So I think those are the four things I would say would really help us as professionals to enhance our services to try to combat unconscious bias the best that we can.
Yeah, wow, a lot going on there. And one of the things that really strikes me is the fact that so much of the work that I do in career development is all about network. Go to your network. And I realized my network's not the same as some of these other folks, right? And I think that is just that's a whole nother training and a whole nother understanding that needs to happen on that, and that's sort of that access thing that you were talking about, I think is, people aren't going to come to us if they don't feel like they can be heard, but they're also,
Right.
if they don't have 5 friends going, hey, I was just there.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, and
Exactly.
that's networking. It starts right there, you know.
Right. And we also call that social capital, right? And
Wow.
I can honestly say, as a first generation college student, born and living in a one parent family, I had very little social capital coming into college and frankly out of college. And it was really some strategic people in my life and participating in some strategic programs that gave me access, that leveled the playing field for me. And that's what some of these programs do, or when we do strategic outreach, that's what we're doing, is leveling the playing field.
Absolutely.
Helping people build that social capital that they didn't step on the campus with.
Yeah. And you're providing a safe place. Because oftentimes, and I love what you said, Lakeisha, about having an office that's diverse, so that students will come to the office and they see someone that looks like them and they feel like that person may understand them in a way that someone else in the office would not. And so I think first and foremost, I would say having an environment in our spaces that is welcoming and is diverse, I think is key. And if it's not, then you do things to do the outreach, to do the heavy lifting, so that you can reach people where they're at and provide opportunities for them to see that, well, maybe there's no one that looks like me in that space, but the people in that space care about who I am as a human being, and they're willing to invest in giving me the resources necessary for me to be successful. And I think that's really key. In terms of my own background, I grew up in San Diego, California, in Southeast San Diego, in the inner city. And so it was at a time where busing was the answer for students in the inner city to have a better way of life. So I was bused to my junior high and high school, and I was in environments where very few people looked like me, especially when I was in college preparatory classes. I oftentimes was the only one. And then my college experiences as well, I went to predominantly white institutions where I was the only one. And so that really did shape me and the way I navigated and viewed the world. And so first and foremost, I think we all have been saying this, recognizing that we all have a history that has shaped how we interact with others, and being honest about that. I think that's really key. And not just talking about diversity, but really doing things professionally and personally to increase the interactions that we have with people that look differently from us, that maybe have different perspectives than we have, so that we can really serve not just some, but all the students that come across our offices and we see on our campuses. And so I think that's really key. I think there's a lot of conversation going on now about the importance of diversity. You'll hear colleges talking about it. You'll hear employers talking about it. But I like to go to that old adage, talk is cheap. You need to do more than just talk the talk. You need to walk the walk, and you need to put in the work. So if your team isn't diverse, look at your hiring practices. Oftentimes, just like you, Lakeisha, we'll have employers come to our campus. We're looking to diversify our organization. And so, like you, one of the first questions we'll ask, so what does that look like for you? And what does your current organization look like? And so it's not enough to say, I want to do this. You need to come up with a plan, and you need to talk to people, different perspectives, to help you get there. Because if your organization looks homogenous, that means that you need to go outside of your organization to get some diverse perspectives. So you can get a different result. Because if you keep doing the same things you've done, you're going to continue to get those same results. And so I think it's key when working with students, they can tell if you're sincere, if you're for real about really supporting their success. So regardless of their background or circumstances, if you're going to do what's necessary to help them. And so I think that does require some real serious self-reflection that people are not always willing to do. And I will say, for us to get to a place where all students are served, where even those who may not have the social capital can get the social capital they need to be successful, we need self-reflection, and we need to be willing to do the work that we need to do if we have not done all we could do to help all students. And so that's what I would say to add to what Lakeisha was saying about the first question you asked, Jim.
Yeah, you know, and it can't just be that it looks good. It really has to be, you know, there has to be action, and there has to be, you know, you got to think about what is it, what is missing in this picture, and what, you know, and what can we do to do that outreach, you know. And I think about, I helped Colby College out. They were a little short staffed, so I went over and helped out a couple of days, and their international students weren't coming to this career center. And so I kind of did some outreach to them, and then I would do like LinkedIn for international students. It was the same exact LinkedIn workshop I did, but it was LinkedIn for international students. And I did one on using going global, you know, and I did going global for international students. And suddenly they, you know, it was the same presentation, but it required us to look at, there was a deficit there. We weren't reaching people, you know, for a reason, because, well, they didn't feel like we were doing anything for them, you know. And so all we did is we did the same workshops, but I put on 4 international students. And then I started working with the international office, and pretty soon we started getting international students. So it isn't the fact that you can say, we're open for everybody. That's just not enough, right?
No, it's not.
You have to be intentional. You have to be, and what you just described is being intentional. And oftentimes we are very complacent. We have this center, they need to just come to us, and that's somehow magically that's going to happen. And there needs to be intentionality. And also too, it needs to be listening to students. Students, if you ask, they will tell you what they need, and they will tell you what is missing from the space that you're working in, and you think you're just doing amazing work. And I don't know why students aren't taking advantage of these wonderful things that we do. It's sometimes as simple as asking, and you can change the things you're doing to be more effective for all students. And so I think that's something that we don't do enough of, is having those conversations, meeting students where they're at, and asking what it is that they need, what is it that they would like to see us do differently to be able to really assist them with being successful. And so intentionality and listening are 2 things that can go a very long way.
I definitely agree with Dr. Love. And Jim, I think what students are looking for sometimes is just for you to call their name. And it reminds me of the difference between getting a piece of mail or an email that says to whom it may concern versus your name. You're more likely to answer that thing that has your name on it. So I think when you call them out and say, I recognize that you may have some different challenges or need different resources than everybody else, I think that really says, wow, I'm accepted there. They get me there. And on our campus, we've even had to do that for graduate students versus undergrad, right? We have to say, hey, grad students, we have these resources for you, for international students, for veteran students, you know, really to let people know, hey, we know it's not one size fits all, because it really isn't at all. And I think that there's just it's almost like the nature of a consumer. There's something special when the place you're going to be serviced recognizes your uniqueness.
Most definitely.
You know, and I think about, and again, it's, I live in Maine, you know, it's pretty white, you know, so I don't have a lot of opportunity. But let me play that international student thing out one more step, and that is, it. In fairness to Colby, the Colby Career Center did a survey. They did reach out to the international students.
Oh.
Why aren't you coming, right? And but it isn't, in my opinion, enough just to do the workshop in LinkedIn for international students. I'm a host parent of international. Every year we get a host, typically a host son. We go to the international student events. The international students would have a little coffee house get together Fridays at 4:30. Every once in a while I'd go there. And that, to the earlier point I think that Lakeisha made, is you can't just say we're open. You've got to, you got to, people like me, I have to put myself out there. I have to, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. I mean, this isn't really I'm pretty comfortable right now, but I mean, this was, I had a little, this last 6 months, I'm like always pushing myself to sort of watch some TED Talks that challenge me. Go to Harvard. The Harvard website has some implicit bias tests you can take. And it's like, I'm pushing myself out. And I feel like that's one of the things that I just sort of challenge myself to do is get out there. And I don't know what we're going to talk about today. I know we had a couple big questions, but I don't know where this conversation's going, right? And so I think that's what it takes, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And Jim, I want to really highlight the Harvard implicit bias study. I actually teach our freshman course, and I have my freshman students do that. I let them pick which one. They test your implicit bias on race, gender, sexuality, obesity, just all types of things that permeate our workplaces. And I think that you're right. The work starts with you. And I think one good tool, as I'm diving into this for my students, and what are activities that we can all do? One of them is individualizing people. So we all have assumptions, right? We all make them and make broad assumptions about different cultures, different peoples, different groupings, but people are also individuals. Yes. And I think sometimes we need to step back and take away the TV and what we see, take away the images from the internet and what we see, and remember to see people. And that goes for me. And I'll give one great example. It's one of the groups sometimes for me that it's very hard to connect with, sometimes can be white men. Sometimes that's just a group where we don't have a lot in common, because I'm a real big relator person. I can find something to have in common with people when I sit down and talk to people, and that's very important to me. But sometimes there can be some values differences and privilege, or the way we communicate, or what is seen as important. And I have really learned that I have to see people. When I go into a meeting, I can't go, oh no, here I am in a group with all men. I have to still see so-and-so is someone's father. So-and-so is someone's uncle. So-and-so has life issues just how I have life issues. And I think that we have to find strategies to temper the messaging that we see on TV, because TV shows us the sensational pieces, right? That's what we see on the news. That's what we see. That's what children see in music videos. Right now in our political environment, media really can paint a narrative of groups of people. And it can be very dangerous. So we have to counteract that ourselves and remember to still see people.
That's a great point.
Yeah. What I like to call it is looking beyond the stereotypes, because I think for every group in social media and just the entertainment industry in general, it really plays to stereotypes. And unfortunately, if a person hasn't had a lot of interaction with someone different from themselves, they oftentimes will embrace a stereotype as if that's a truth. And so I think really it's important for people to be willing, and this is me too, this is why I'm always looking for ways to continue to grow personally and professionally, through conferences, through workshops, through readings, so I can continuously remind myself to look beyond a stereotype and look beyond surface things, and look at, as you were saying, Lakeisha, that look at people as individuals, and remind myself to do that. And I think That's a key thing that anyone working as a career practitioner should be doing. I think it's a key thing to continuously learn and grow. If you're going to be able to serve all students that come across your doorstep, not just some, and to do it well, you need to continuously do that serious self-reflection and continuously look for ways to grow as an individual, personally and professionally, so that you can give your best to those that you are assisting in the career services arena. And so I think that's really key.
Well, so you kind of moved to my second question. And,
oh, wow. I was just naturally.
I mean, if it's really, so what can career service providers do to improve their sensitivity to the subject? And I think you've really started diving into that. I didn't want to stop your thinking, but it's just a good segue. I mean, so a lot of that is just to force ourselves to sort of do that internal exploration, right? And begin to make awareness. Cheryl, I didn't know if you wanted to finish or add any more to that, but what else is out there what else should we be doing as career service providers?
Well, oftentimes people think that they have to spend a lot of money and they have to go outside. I've got to go to that conference in another country and learn all these, amazing things. And there's stuff happening in your own backyard. And also, when I say backyard, at the organization, whether it's a college, you have your own private practice, nonprofit organization, where you're at, there's opportunities for you to be able to not just survive, but thrive. So we created recently excellence in diversity and excellence department. And from that department, there's been trainings, as well as the human resource office here on the campus here at Cal Poly Pomona. So there's been trainings on implicit bias that have happened quite frequently on this campus, as well as other things that professionals, not just career service professionals either, that they can do to continue to not just survive, but thrive, so that diversity and inclusion isn't just talking points. And so right where you're at, oftentimes there's all kind of wonderful opportunities to really be able to do that serious self-reflection that I think is key to be able to serve the populations effectively you're trying to serve. But then beyond your own backyard, there's wonderful professional organizations out there doing amazing work, offering amazing opportunities through roundtables, through virtual happy hours, through conferences, webinars, to really help you to continue to learn and to be more effective with all of the students that you are serving. And so I know this is not an official National Career Development Association event, but I would be remiss if I didn't do a small plug for NCDA, especially because of the work that I do as the co-chair for diversity initiatives and cultural inclusions. We have an event coming up next month where we're going to be participating in the virtual Career Practitioner Institute. And we will be doing a presentation, our committee, around this subject matter. And NCDA, through their workshops and conferences and career practitioner institutes, provide all kinds of opportunities for a professional to continue to grow. And then there's other organizations, so I'm not just gonna do a shout out for NCDA, but the National Association of Colleges and Employers, NACE, they have a training coming up in a couple of weeks that I signed up for that is dealing with diversity issues. And so there's lots of opportunity, and these things I'm mentioning are not big costs either.
Right.
And so you can for free in a lot of instances, or just a few dollars, so to speak, can find ways to continue to grow. And then there's lots of readings that one can do at one's own pace to continue to work on the things that you have to work on as an individual to be able to effectively help all of the students, not just some that come across, or your clients that come across your way.
And if I can just add to
absolutely.
the rich information and action steps that Dr. Love just gave, I really want to emphasize the reading, and not just reading nonfiction, but pick up a book written by a person of color or underrepresented group.
Yes.
I think that steps like that are simple steps that people can incorporate into their everyday lives to show you and expose you to other ways of being. Movies. I have my students this week, they're actually all picking a movie that surrounds some sort of social justice issue. And they're simply going to reflect on that movie. I also wanted to mention one of the things I do think that we have to be more intentional about is not being judgmental and honoring others. And I think one of the things I have been challenged with this year, because I train on this topic from a job search perspective, and we have a career closet in our office. And sure, Dr. Love, I think you guys have a career closet.
Yes, and I'm the coordinator of the
and you are the coordinator.
Pomona, yes.
And the first question that really came up is, do we have a male and a female section? And it really got me thinking further about the fact that professional dress and professionalism are privileged concepts.
Yes.
And because they're privileged concepts, in order to teach them, we're actually being judgmental. Okay. At the end of the day, are they going anywhere? No, because they're cultural parts of who we are and how we operate professionally. But I think we have to have this level of awareness of the privilege we all can live in and not judge others. And for me as an African-American woman, even on my campus, one of the bigger lessons for me a couple of years ago was I had some students on campus, they started calling me the blazer lady. And I was like, what in the world is this with the blazer lady? And what it was they had never seen an African-American woman with a title like mine or dressing like me. And believe it or not, the other African-American women, my students, felt I was distant from them because of this cultural piece that we call the blazer, right?
Wow.
And it blew my mind, because in my mind, I'm like, I worked hard to wear my blazer. I want to wear my blazer. but I begin to realize that to them, the visual of it communicated something different. And if I wanted to reach them, I needed to maybe not wear the blazers, but it really took me into this place of understanding privilege. And privilege is not just racial, privilege can also be economic. And we tend to be judgmental. So sometimes even when we're trying to help and we're listening to our students' stories, we're listening out of a judgmental zone of you're less than. Oh, that's so unfortunate. And the institution that I am at, we have so many students who have struggled that I have learned to value their struggles. And because struggle gives you this strength. If you can overcome your struggles, it gives you this grit, this strength, this resiliency that I think brings so much richness to our institutions and to the workplace. So I have really learned to listen to some stories that blow my mind sometimes. I had a student one time who scheduled an appointment with me, and she showed up in slippers. And I was like, when we walked out, I said, why do you have on slippers? She had gotten hit by a car the day before, was in the hospital, didn't want to miss her appointment with me, left the hospital, but she didn't have any shoes with her. She was wearing those little booties that they give you at the hospital. Wow. So one side would say, oh my goodness, here's a student with no shoes. But what I say is, look at this woman's persistence to get to the Career Center. So I think our lens of judgment really needs to be challenged, and it's an individual thing. And then the last piece I will probably also say is really looking at competency, and NCDA does have competencies, individual competencies for multicultural competency. There's also a document out there, and I can't remember what group it came for, but it was assessing your office for its diversity and inclusion. And I'll find that for you at a different time, Jim, and send that in case any of your viewers want that.
Yeah.
But I think assessment is also key, assessing ourselves as professionals against those competencies and assessing our units as well. But I really, really can't emphasize changing our mindsets on judging other ways of being. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong.
And since you mentioned the competencies, I wanted to let you know that the Diversity Initiative and Cultural Inclusion Committee this year, we will be looking at those multicultural competencies that NCDA has. We're going to be revising them. So there's a task force that is coming out of that committee, and I'm part of that task force. So we will be revising those competencies. So we're continuously looking at ways to be able to help people do their very best for all populations. And in fact, I know it's not an NCDA event, but I did want to let you know that part of the committee that I co-chair, we every year we update the multicultural resource list that's on the NCDA website.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to be a member to access that resource. It gets updated every year by the committee I co-chair. And this year, we added a social justice component to that resource list. So that's another thing that you can do. There's professional organizations out there like NCDA that have resource lists like a multicultural career counseling resource list that can assist you in really doing the work you need to do to continue to grow. And the other thing I wanted to touch on, Lakeisha, that you brought up with regards to the clothes closet, and really, we had a situation where we had students saying to us, you know, you're using the male, female, traditional way of thinking, and you need to rethink how you highlight professional dress. And we're like, well, we have this set up like stores have it set up. So that was my first thing. And then it's like, I've got, so then, you know, but I'm like, let me listen to and have a conversation and learn more so we can better serve everybody, because we obviously are not. And so I learned a lot. And so part of being willing to have those conversations. And so the other thing, I think there needs to be a willingness. And Jim, like what you've done today, kudos to you. You were like, I need to think about some of these things. I need to have a conversation. Being willing to step out and be a little bit uncomfortable. I teach in the educational leadership department at Cal Poly Pomona, and this summer the doctoral students that I was teaching, one of the things I said like a mantra: if you're going to do social justice work, because that's part of what the class was about, you have to be willing to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so part of, so it's a mantra. They, after a while, it's like, okay, Dr. Love, you're gonna say you gotta get comfortable with being uncomfortable. But that really, in order to do career services work at the level that we all should be doing, you do need to be willing to be uncomfortable, to be vulnerable, to listen to perspectives that don't match yours, so that you can continue to learn and grow. And I think that's really key. And there's lots of opportunities out there between readings and professional organizations that you can be involved with to be able to do just that. And I think that's really key.
So I'm always trying to keep these interviews to 25 minutes, but I just couldn't stop this one, but I'm going to have to stop it at some point.
Yeah, understood.
But, you know, and I'm not, maybe we need to come back. Maybe we'll come back and visit. Lakeisha, if you find those resources, that'd be great. You can send them to me and I can throw them into my blog that I'll put together with this. But some great points, you know, and I just think one of the two huge takeaways for me, I think Lakeisha said it at the beginning, nobody's 100% anything. I was like, man, that was profound for me right there.
Yes.
and it's sort of tied to your last comment about judgment, and just don't judge people, because really nobody's 100% anything, right? And we're all individuals. And that's one of the things that in the FCD, the Facilitating Career Development class that I teach on diversity, when we get to that, I'm always saying, don't forget it's an individual. It's, you can't say all people that look like this are that way. I mean, it's just, it just doesn't work that way. And we got so much more to say. All I'm going to say is, well, first off, I'm going to wrap this up, and hold on here. And I just want to say, before we say goodbye, that Peak Careers, I've been providing the Facilitating Career Development class since 2001. I have online discussion-based seminars for career practitioners. They're a little different. They're not independent studies, and there's no set time you have to log in. They're 5 week long. They're worth every seminar but one is 15 hours approved by NCDA for recertification. And they're discussion based with other career people. So you have a cohort of people for 5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So check that out on my website. I used to do face-to-face workshops, but I mean, I will again someday. And I have individual career coaching clients. I'm also the author of a field guide for career practitioners. And if you'd like to get my weekly career email, you can sign up and get the email on my website, and you'll get the top 10 tips for working with an undecided person. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, and Instagram, but I'm mostly on LinkedIn. If you're looking for me, that's the place I hang out the most. Thank you both so much today. This has been wonderful and enlightening, and I hope informative for lots of people.
And thank
You're
you
welcome.
so much for having me, Jim. Really appreciated having a conversation with you and Lakeisha. It's really a great way to spend part of my afternoon. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim. And always good to see you, Dr. Love.
Good to see you too.